Now, Bronwyn, what is a radiation oncologist doing with spending time away from patients and talking about tobacco-free portfolios?
About 5 years ago, I discovered completely by accident that some of my pension fund was being invested in the tobacco industry.
Horror!
Well, for me it was horror because I had, by that stage, I'd been a cancer doctor for 10 years and I had watched hundreds and hundreds of patients die, sadly, from tobacco-related illness. So I was very aware of the devastating impact of tobacco. So for me, it was just such a terrible fit to think that my money was in fact being invested in that industry.
Now, I'm amazed and delighted to say that since that time, you've actually persuaded a very significant minority of investment portfolios in Australia to be tobacco-free.
Well, I must say I haven't done it all on my own, and there have been some great supporters along the way. But in Australia, the current status is that there are 33 tobacco-free pension funds, and they have total assets worth about $500 billion. So these
what proportion of the market is that then?
And it's about 38% of the market in Australia, if you exclude the very small self-managed super funds. So of the big institutional investors, it's 38%. And it's rapidly becoming a new mainstream expected standard in Australia. I'm working with at least another 50% of the market as well, so and having very good conversations. So it used to be a difficult conversation. It's not so difficult anymore in Australia.
Right, now Australia succeeded in getting plain packaging for cigarettes. Now you're making big headway in getting the portfolios free of tobacco.
That's right, and I think, look, I've been extremely fortunate in Australia to, really stand on the shoulders of some great leaders in tobacco control.
What's happening elsewhere in the world? Because that is important, isn't it?
That's absolutely right. I think in Australia we're very lucky that there have been so many great leaders in tobacco that we have a situation at the moment where only 12% of our population smokes. That's dropping all of the time. There's still a long way to go, and some populations within Australia, the smoking rate is in fact much higher. For example, in our Indigenous population, we have a lot more work to do. But you're right, this isn't just a problem in one country. Tobacco is a catastrophic problem around the world, and these initiatives, need to be seriously considered in other places.
Now, I know you're having conversations in the United Kingdom. What are your suggestions for cancer clinicians and members of the public to do to try and change this rather scary situation where your pension fund might well be invested in the very thing that's going to kill you?
Well, my advice to people as, individuals is firstly to look at their own pension fund and just ask the question, what is happening with your money? As a cancer doctor, for me, it was just an exquisitely bad fit for my money to be invested in tobacco. So I think cancer clinicians in fact have a lot of power, and they need to ask that question to their fund. If lots of people ask that question, then the fund will be more motivated to look at it. But also I think there is a role to play for the big organisations, so the big peak bodies for health that exist in all countries around the world. All of them need to have these conversations with their governments, with their government sovereign wealth funds, and ensure that they are tobacco-free.
And if you make a success with tobacco, there are other factors causing cancer and other forms of ill health that you could target eventually in the future too.
Look, I'm really very focused on tobacco. I think that tobacco for me is just the one thing that it's so black and white. It's, 0 is the only safe number of cigarettes a human being can smoke. The scale of the problem is profound, with an estimated 6 million deaths from tobacco this year in 2015, and the industry doesn't respond well to engagement, to do better things. So engagement is considered quite futile with the tobacco industry. So for those reasons, tobacco is really a very clear-cut situation. So an exception does need to be made for tobacco. So I'm really looking at making that the new baseline mainstream expected standard for pension funds around the world.
So if engagement with the tobacco industry is ineffective, then you're saying that taking away some of the source of their money is a good idea?
Many big financial institutions want to be good corporate citizens. They want to engage with the companies where they own stock, and they want to persuade those companies to do better things. And in virtually all circumstances, I think engagement is an excellent technique. However, an exception is required for the tobacco industry because engagement is futile. The only acceptable outcome is that the tobacco industry doesn't exist. So for that reason, I put forward to people that it's worthwhile seriously considering divesting their tobacco shares.
So to sum up, how would you leave the world's cancer clinicians and other cancer professionals with key messages on this issue?
My key message for cancer professionals around the world is to use the stories that they have about their patients and the true experience of tobacco, the true impact that tobacco has on individuals in the community. Use those experiences to drive change, and the change that I would love to promote is tobacco-free portfolios.